Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Write and Unite podcast, where we essentially unite the world through writing. As always, I'm your host, Ankit Shukla, and my co host, Nico Casal, is joining me as before. So, Nico, good to see you.
Good to see you again, too.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we were just a few seconds ago talking about this off camera, but you can kind of see the edge of it, but you have the
Yeah.
Scottish flag behind you, and would you mind telling our audience what the significance of that is?
There is this program that was started to try to conserve some forest land in Scotland,
Hmm.
where basically what they're doing is they're selling ownership of foot by foot squares. Now, you can't really develop it because that's part of the agreement because they are trying to conserve land. It's a nature conservation thing.
Gotcha.
But by purchasing that and by owning it, if you own any piece of land in Scotland, no matter how small, it makes you a Scottish lord.
Yeah.
Now, there's no political power to go with it or anything like that, but some friends of mine thought it would be cool to buy me the title.
Nice.
So they got me the Scottish flag to go with it. Also, some of that blue face paint, like in Braveheart,
Yeah.
the Woad, I think it's called. So yeah, and then this one here is a map of Skyrim for those who've played that game.
Yeah.
Figured that was a little better a background than the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. The kitchen sink. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever works. But that's cool. I mean, all's well. I mean, it would be hard to really develop anything on a foot by foot land. So, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I could make a tiny wooden castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it there.
Right. Yeah. If you ever had a daughter, like a Barbie's dream house, little Barbie's dream house there for her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be funny.
Yeah.
Little palace.
Cool, cool. Well, that's awesome. And so we kind of did our catch ups on our last episode, and again, hopefully we'll be able to record these on a more regular basis. But today we wanted to talk about where we get our inspiration from writing, and
Yeah.
you know, I've kind of gotten to the point. Mine's pretty simple. I've gotten to the point where my mind is always open, and if I happen to see something, I may go through an event. I don't know, be told something, and it kind of immediately pops in my head. I don't know if I've just developed that writer's mindset where, hey, I just think of everything. Whenever I hear something that's interesting, I may go, hey, I wonder how I can turn that into a book. I don't remember having this mindset maybe 10 or 15 years ago before I started writing more regularly, but that's kind of where I am in my life where, hey, I'll see something, I'll hear something, someone will tell me something, I'll go through an experience, and I'll be like, okay, hey, that will be a great book. For instance, um, my mom has a knife that my grandpa owned. He was a police officer in India back in I want to say the
Mm.
50s and 60s, around that time period. And when I saw it as an adult, I said, "Huh, I wonder what this knife has been through. What has it done?
Mm.
What has it done? Has it ever, you know, taken someone's life? I don't know. I have no idea still to
Yeah.
this day if it has, but it just got me thinking, huh, what has this knife been through? And that gave me the inspiration to write my book, Grandpa's Knife, because kind
Mm.
of a just a
That's a
short,
cool
yeah,
idea.
just a short plot summary of the book. It's about a boy who doesn't really think much of his grandpa. He kind of sees him as this old, frail old man who
Mm.
isn't really good for much. Let's just say, which is
Yeah.
kind of sad. But at the same time, he gets gifted a knife by his grandpa, and every time he holds the knife, he not just gets a flashback, but he actually gets put into his grandpa's body and is actually living his
Mm.
experiences. And he eventually learns. At first, he's really confused, like what's going on. He thinks he's just having bad dreams, but then all of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, I'm living my grandpa's life," and he
Yeah.
develops a tremendous amount of respect for his grandpa, learning what he had actually been through in his life. So, but
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That is a fun way to. That is a fun place to find inspiration. Definitely, just from little things and wondering about stuff. I mean, as fiction writer types of people, once you have the fiction writer mindset, your mind is always trying to consider
mhm,
possibilities. And sometimes that's a good thing because that means you're writing stories or at
right,
least coming up with stories, even if you don't actually write them down.
right,
all writers should beware, though, that the fact that your mind is constantly coming up with possibilities also means that anytime you're in almost any situation, your mind is coming up with what could go wrong,
Right.
and you can drive yourself crazy
Hmm.
if you if you don't catch that. Now, for me, for stories that I actually write, I find that for me, it comes from other stories. And I don't mean that in the sense of, I'll read a book and I think, oh, good, I'm going to steal this story and turn it into something else. Although certainly authors have made quite a living that way. I'm not a fan of 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight, but I understand that 50 Shades of Grey started out as Twilight fan fiction and then became a huge deal. So, but rather, it's any kind of story, whether it's a real story, something from history, something that happened to a friend or a family member,
Hmm.
something that you yourself have experienced, or something you've read or seen, or maybe just some kid rambled on telling you a wild story and you thought, huh, I could expand on
Hmm.
this. That seems to be the gist of it, of where a lot of it comes from.
Hmm.
So certainly, I mean, anyone who seeks to be an author should. It used to be said that authors should read a lot, and I would still agree with
Yeah.
that. But even when you're not
Hmm.
reading, you should be consuming stories in some fashion,
Right.
even if it's just a conversation with a friend and you listen to them tell you about their day or some memory they have from the past, or you think back on things that happened to you and think, how could that have gone differently if I knew then what I know now? What would I do differently, and how could that turn out? And sometimes it may just be speculation of, if I had the ability to do this,
Hmm.
if maybe I was faster or stronger, or if like in video games, how you can save the game, and then if something goes horribly wrong, you go back to your last save. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could do that in real life?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
should always be consuming that kind of material to expand storytelling.
Right. So, I mean, I think in summary, like, as far as inspiration, it can come from anywhere. Especially, yeah,
Sure.
when
Yeah.
I'm sure artists, painters, sculptors, musicians, artists of all type are probably in the similar ballpark. I mean, they hear something, they see something, whatever, are told something, and they might
Yeah.
get an inspiration for a song or a painting or whatever. It's just, once you develop that writer's mindset or the artist mindset, you just kind of, things just happen and you get something in your mind and you say, hey, I could write a great book about that. I could make a great painting in relation to that. I could write a great song about that. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean,
One thing.
yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
But one thing I love to do with some of the time when I'm not actively writing or otherwise working on something is I'll go on to Pinterest and then just look at pictures of characters, whether that's, all kinds of different fantasy art, and just look at characters and look for ones that I don't already know who they are. And I just look at the image and then try to, just as a mental exercise, think of what's the story behind this. And sometimes it's as simple as, you find a picture of this very sandpapery skinned old man wearing a mining helmet and smoking a cigarette. And you're like, okay, so this is some kind of miner. Maybe he mines coal. But one day when he was mining coal, he found a diamond, and now he's not sure what to do with it. Does he tell anybody? Does he keep it to himself? Does he keep digging there, try to find more?
Mm.
But other times you find some really crazy fantasy art image, and you have to not only think of who that character is or what that character is, but the entire world that exists so that they can be what they are. Because our world facilitates the existence of humans and such, but you may find pictures of elves or any number of fantastical creatures, and can pull inspiration from that. I found that's a very fun pastime.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it's great, and it's great that we all kind of can get our inspiration from different places, but the idea is still the same. It can come from anywhere, and I look forward to whatever books might I may produce later on from inspiration I get all around me. And I hope
yeah,
any of you writers or someday would be writers, just remember that, hey, if when you start writing books, just keep your mind open and think about ideas that come to you and how those might be able to be turned into a book. And remember this: books don't have to be novels. They don't have to be
It's true.
50,000 or 100,000 words. I mean, 10 or 20,000 words is still a book. It.
Yeah, novellas they call them. I have a friend who writes a series of novellas that all take place in a world with, where dinosaurs have been brought back, and you've got people who go and they hunt dinosaurs to try to keep their population under control
Yeah.
because you don't want dinosaurs running over the entire Earth.
Right, right.
That would be rather bad for human civilization.
Hmm.
And his books are typically between 15,000 to 20,000 words, which for those who may not know about word count, that's roughly 50 pages, usually under 100.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, nothing crazy long.
Yeah.
Personally, though, I find the shorter stories harder to write
Mm.
because it's harder to bring it to a satisfying
Hmm.
ending in a short amount of time
Right.
than it is if you really have time to explore
Hmm.
what the characters are going through and how they would solve their problems.
Sure.
All writing, to some degree, I would argue, is a problem solving exercise.
Sure.
You start off with whatever the problem is, which is, in Lord of the Rings, it's the Dark Lord might be coming back because his ring still exists. And then how do you solve that problem? Well, you go and you throw the ring in a volcano, a specific volcano. But then also a problem may be something like these people's marriage is on the rocks. So how are they going to fix that? Or these two people are in love, but they don't. But neither of them knows if the other one feels the same way. So how are they going to go about solving that? Oftentimes, those more emotional and psychological problems are going to be the more interesting because not a lot of us can relate to having to throw a ring into a volcano to stop the end of the world.
Yeah.
But
Do that every week.
most of us can relate to relationship issues of some kind.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, that's a very good point. And yeah, novellas, I mean, short stories, and I think
Mm.
like what is it, novelettes, like I don't know, 10 to 15,000 words. I can't remember all the different word counts off the top of my
Yeah.
head, but yeah, there's like I said, hey, books don't have to be 200 pages. If you have a great idea and can think you can make a great story and it's only like 50, 60 pages, hey, that's fine. That's still a book. And people may
Yeah.
love to, you may have fans out there that would love to read it, or you might just be writing it for yourself. That's fine too. But
Yeah.
whatever.
People would be surprised how many very short stories have been turned even into movies and
Hmm.
that sort of thing.
Hmm.
You ever see The Minority Report with Tom Cruise?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was actually a very short book, if I remember right. And instead of being the kind of book that you turn the pages this way, it was a flip up,
Hmm.
as if it was a report,
Oh,
as if you were actually reading a police report,
oh,
which I thought was kind of a cool way to set it up.
yeah, yeah, that is pretty cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Perfect. Well,
and again, pretty short,
yeah.
maybe 10,000 words, and they made a major motion picture out of
Wow,
it.
yeah. Yeah, that is, yeah, I mean, 10,000 words. I mean, that's like almost short story level. I mean, yeah,
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 pretty much.
yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
cool. I mean, did you want anything add to, finding inspiration? And I will add one more thing.
Hmm.
Some people, this may be up to you. Some people get inspiration just from their normal environment, whether it's loud or whatever. Sometimes you might need to isolate yourself to get inspiration, whatever the case. Do
Yeah.
what's best for you and do what's best for you to get your ideas.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I find helps me is, inspiration that gives you the idea for the story.
Hmm.
That's really only the beginning. You need a different kind of inspiration to get you writing individual
Hmm.
scenes and chapters and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I find that one big thing that helps for that is to create playlists of ambient music. To clarify that, I would say that the best kinds of playlists are going to be instrumental. First of all, you don't want lyrics because then you're typing what's in the lyrics,
Hmm.
unless either it's lyrics you don't understand
Hmm.
or lyrics that you know so well that you can tune them out.
Hmm.
If
Okay.
it's a song you've listened to a million times to the point where it can just become
Yeah.
background. But Yeah, I have playlists for individual characters. I have playlists for specific settings. I have playlists for kinds of scenes. You know, if I need to write a sad scene, I've got a sad scene playlist. If I need to write a romantic scene, I've got something for that. Scary. It's very easy to find scary music, especially on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
Just don't listen to it for too long, otherwise, you know, you might start to get a little jittery
yeah.
yourself.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot to work with, and that helps in part because our era, so to speak, is the era of people consuming stories in the form of
Hmm.
television and movies and video games. And all of those rely very heavily on the idea of background
Hmm.
music. Star Wars would not be the success it was if it weren't for the fact that it starts off with a song that makes you think this is going to be the greatest movie in the world.
Yeah.
Even if you hate Star Wars, that opening song is still hypes you up and
Right.
makes you think it's going to be great.
Right.
So, because of that, I think our minds are trained to fill in ideas of what the music is telling us. Fantasia, for those who've seen the Disney Fantasia or Fantasia 2000, that was essentially what they did. They listened to pieces of classical music
Hmm.
and then said, what kind of story could go with this? And for pomp and circumstance, they had Donald Duck on Noah's Ark. Very funny, weird little thing that they had there. For Rhapsody in Blue, they had, you know, the big city, you know, some people looking for jobs and other people not happy in the jobs they had.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had a lot of fun with that. So we can do the same sort of thing, I
Yeah.
think.
Absolutely. And I know we had in the past we discussed writer's block, so hopefully maybe we can revisit that
Mm,
topic someday in the future. But
yeah.
no, that's great. All good points. And thank you, Nico, for joining me. I know you have to be a little flexible. We have to make some adjustments based on
Yeah.
both our schedules, but I appreciate you being flexible with your time.
Yeah, that's fine. Schedule wise, I can be a little flexible, but I can't touch my toes, so I can't be flexible
Right,
that way.
right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I can't either. Even when I was a kid, I had a
Yeah.
hard time with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I failed that part of gym.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, perfect. Well, is there anything else you wanted to add for as far as getting inspiration?
I can't think of much else. I just know that like at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm going to suddenly realize that there's something I should have said there. But, you know, as it goes. And if that happens, I can write it down, save it for next podcast as an addendum
Yeah.
or something like that.
And you do.
But I think
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we've given people some good places to start at least. Start with other stories, whether it's you know made up stories or real
Hmm.
stories. Keep asking, what if I could do this? What if someone could do that? Or what if that this is actually the way something
Yeah.
works? A lot of sci-fi is written on the basic question of what if there was life on other planets, you know? And to get the kind of inspiration that keeps a scene going rather than just getting a story idea,
Yeah.
listen to some music, or read a similar scene, or maybe even just watch a similar kind of scene and kind of get the feel for how those kinds of stories play out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you actually did bring up a good point. Yeah, sometimes you do get inspiration in the middle of the night. I will recommend to everyone keep a notepad, or hey, we all have cell phones with a note section, or
Yeah,
however. Hey, if you do come up with a good idea, you may think that, hey, oh, I'm going to remember it when I sit down to write later. Ugh, I've made that mistake before. So if you think of something, inspires you, and you think something might if you think of some type of good idea, hey, pull out your notepad, pull out your phone, whatever, and just jot it
yeah,
down real quick because hey, I can almost
yeah.
guarantee
I might
I'll
recommend
remember it later.
Yeah, I might recommend Notepad more than phone because the whole blue screen thing
Yeah,
can then keep you
yeah,
awake. You
yeah,
know, if you're getting in the middle of the night, you probably want to write on paper.
absolutely.
But otherwise, yeah, the phone works great for that.
Yeah, yeah. If you're old school and do like to keep notepads, I still do. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you think of an
the good
idea,
old
write it down
fashioned
as soon as
paper.
possible, and then that way, when you sit down to write at some point, you'll still remember it.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Well, thanks again, Nico, for joining me. And
thank you.
yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for another episode of the Right and Unite podcast. Once again, we're hoping to do these on a much more regular basis and hope you guys join us and contribute. If you have any questions or suggestions, if you want to give us any input about what we spoke about, yeah, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you on the next episode.
All right. See you then.
All right, see you, Nico.
Bye.
Cool. All right.